All right. Well, this week I have a special guest. This is Don King, and we're going to do the part that is going to make him the most uncomfortable first, which is where I'm going to go ahead and, from my perspective, let you know how I met this guy. So, Don King, this was probably almost 10, 11 years ago now, maybe even a little bit longer. There was this hot new fad grabbing the nation, and it was called CrossFit. And I ended up going to a CrossFit gym. And within a couple of months, my regular 5:30 a.m., 6:30 a.m. class, there was this guy named Don King. And he would come in and he just had this work ethic that a lot of people just really noticed and responded to. But at the same time, he was kind of running laps around us in a lot of different places. Was a few years older than us as well, which really kind of made me mad sometimes. And this is the guy that would come in and still work out. Like if he had gotten injured, he was literally on one of those skateboards, scooter things on one leg at one point, but he didn't let that stop him. If you've ever injured your legs and you've seen people on that like scooter that you put your knee up on and that you kind of have to like hop along, like he's still coming to the gym every day as a routine and just working different parts that don't involve that because he's going to keep progressing anyway. And I just saw this at the gym and kind of got really curious about what this guy did for a living. And kind of through conversations and things like that, found out that he was worked at a local company here in Tacoma, Washington, represent, and that he was in sales. And anyone that listens to this podcast right now and has been following along knows that we talk a lot about technology sales, pre-sales, things like that. But this Don has always been someone that I've wanted to bring on specifically because of the fact that every once in a while you notice one of those people in your life, and it could be in a professional situation or it could be at the gym, like I was just talking about, where they lead by example. They walk the walk, they put in the hard work. They're the people deciding to get good at a skill and do 10,000 reps of it and just putting in the work every single day. And people are kind of attracted to that and that kind of leadership. And you don't, unfortunately, see it everywhere. We see a lot of people that want to be leaders, especially in sales. And there's a lot of bluster and there's a lot of, I would even say bullshit sometimes. And then every once in a while, you see someone that actually is putting in the work and that you just want to do well for or want to be on their team because of the fact that they are inspiring you to do better at what you're doing, whether it's at the gym or whether it's at your job and you're reporting to them. You want to hit your sales targets. You want to be able to have better customer conversations and evolve your own role because this person is kind of inspiring you to do those extra things in order to do that. And unfortunately, it's kind of rare, like I'm saying, at least in my experience of 46 years on this planet. And so, Don, now that I've thoroughly embarrassed you, I want to introduce you and let people kind of know where you're at right now. You're in more of an executive consultancy kind of transition of your life, right? You're not in role like a full-time employee at a specific company anymore, correct?
Correct. Yeah. As of January 1, so it's pretty recent.
Yeah.
I've got this little LLC called DK Consultants. But I was with Catalyst Workplace Activation for, 25 years, in the kind of the contract furniture industry. And so as a consultant now, they're my biggest customer right now. So by
Well, that's
far,
nice.
I'm contracting back to them and have a real wonderful relationship with Catalyst. But yeah, as of January 1st, I'm not employed by anybody except myself. So here we go.
How does that feel? Has that been a good transition? Like, does it feel weird to not get up and go to like an office anymore? Or
You know, uh, well, yeah, it brings up a big topic like going to the office has been different since COVID. But
pandemic? Yeah.
actually, Aaron, I gotta circle back with you because I remember when you and I were working out together in the CrossFit gym. It was when you were just starting a new venture. You were starting your own, entrepreneurial
That's
endeavor,
true.
and so anyway, you inspire me. I mean, kind of like reflecting back on. just those experiences with you and others. It's kind of strange because you're right. I mean, there, whatever we choose to do in life, there rarely are too many shortcuts. I mean, you got to put in the work, right? I mean, you have to put in the work, but you know, being able to get to know folks like you in that gym has been a real blessing for me because you inspire me as well. So, uh, but anyway, yeah, it does feel a little bit weird to be independent, but it feels exciting, and so I'm doing well with it, and I'm having fun with it.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about now another thing that doesn't seem to happen as much anymore is you know the roles that existed or the opportunities that existed where you worked at one company for a long stretch of time. Right now, the norm is and has been, I'd say, since gosh, the early 2000s, has been you work at a company for 2 to 3 years. A lot of times, definitely five or less. It's even shorter period of time. A lot of times, if you're in tech, and then you're moving on to another company, another role. And so, what is what have been some of the benefits that you feel like you've gotten to have from, starting out at that company? Like, at what point were you in your career when you started working with Catalyst? Were you an individual contributor at that time, or were you
Uh,
already kind of like leading a sales
no,
team?
I came to Catalyst at the time. The name was BINW. Kind of same ownership. Just we went through a name change back in
Rebranding.
2016. Yeah, rebranding exactly. And but I came, as a manager, and I was running Tacoma, and then eventually took over Seattle and kind of became part of the executive team ultimately as a sales leader. Um, but I was in the industry, that contract furniture industry, for 10 years before that, with a manufacturer out of Michigan. And then prior to that, I got out of the University of Washington, Seattle, in 1980. That's
Mm,
like the last century, Aaron. You realize that? That was like it's like 100 years ago. But anyway,
I
I
know,
am
right? When people say
I
like
did
30
this.
years ago in my head, I'm like, oh, like the late 70s. I'm like, no, it's not.
Anyway, I went to work for a company in Seattle that was in cabinetry, wood and laminate
Mm,
cabinetry for kitchens and bathrooms, and they kind of a wholesaler. And I ended up in operations actually, but I started working with customers, and I really liked working with customers. So my first sales job that I applied for at the time and got was actually covering in Alaska. So I
mm.
took over the state of Alaska as my sales territory, and was selling to different, builders and folks up in Alaska. And so that was my industry for 13 years. And then I decided I wanted to get with a large corporation. And that's how I got into the contract furniture industry. And I worked for a manufacturer for 10 years. And then I came to what was BINW's now Catalyst as a sales leader. And back to your question though, for me, it's like, and I'm familiar with, it's less, it doesn't happen as often, now, just like you're describing. So, to your question though, I mean, it's like you make these relationships over that many years. I mean, even the company, that distributor that I'm referring to, when I chose to get into the contract furniture industry, it was like leaving family. I had been with them for 13
Mm.
years. I mean, there was
Yeah.
like tears and everything. I mean, it was
Yeah.
like, it was and now with Catalyst, I mean, there I have these relationships that are just run, quite deep, and that's gratifying. Honestly, I really love that, and so
That gratification. I hear a lot of companies, I've even touched on this before on this podcast. A lot of companies like to use the feel good line of like, we're a family here, and then very much show through their actions. It's the exact opposite.
yeah,
And I think it's probably a lot of times more accurate to say, we're like a professional sports team. We're looking for the best players. We're looking to develop the best team. If you're an A player, we want to recruit you. If you are not playing and there's someone that's better, then we're going to replace you. And I think that might be a little more honest. But there are the situations like you're talking about where if you're given the chance to grow into different roles, like you said, you started out more in, you said like operations, and then you realized through learning the product set, learning the people there and how things worked, and having that knowledge base, and you also realized at some point that, oh, I really like talking with the customers. This is kind of fun because I know all this stuff of helping them get what they need and get the result that they want, which I feel like is a very pure way to come about developing a salesperson. And a lot of times, what I see, especially in technology industry, but also I think just in modern sales, is this is our sales process. We're recruiting a salesperson who is an SDR rep or wants to step up if it's entry level, or we're looking for an experienced salesperson, and they don't necessarily know the product that well. They have a process, they do the calls, they chase the leads, all this stuff, but they don't necessarily have the background of having been in production or operations or knowing the product backwards and forwards. Um, I'm just wondering if there's a component that's missing now because of that. And I think maybe customers, I don't know, maybe customers are missing out a little bit because there's not that depth of knowledge. And maybe that's, I'm not sure if it's the cart before the horse, like chicken or the egg, what it is, but I'm wondering if that, since sales roles are treated that way now, as kind of like we want to plug somebody in to sell this many units of this, that that's why the turnover and the attrition rate is so high now. I
Yeah.
kind of wonder about that.
It's interesting, listening to you, and one thing that kind of comes to mind is, somebody once said, and I forget who it was, that it's not so much what you do, it's what you become by, what you become by it, you know, and,
Oh, tell me more about that. Yeah.
well, I mean, I think it's true that, no matter what we are becoming, by what we do, we spend so much time and in our energy in our profession and our vocation. And hopefully too, I've learned so much from, younger folks because, the quote unquote workaholic, it's kind of like, you know, I think I've interacted with younger folks, which have been great. In their perspective is, I want to have some balance. I don't want to just work my whole life. And I think that's really right on. At the same time, for whatever amount of energy we put into what we do with our profession and our vocation, I always think it's important to connect with. I've always felt over my career, I want to believe in terms of sales, I want to believe what I'm selling. I want
Yeah.
to believe that it makes somebody better, that I actually
Yeah.
can make, somebody better. And I think sales leadership, that's also been a key part of it, is like helping people to recognize where their strengths are, and to be, where they
Hmm.
should be, passionate and go and work hard to keep developing themselves. Um, so finding helping people discover those good traits, is even as a leader, it's like, but even as a sales professional, you know, uh, constantly working on that. But we have to recognize we're becoming something. And the other thing is, like, when you think about, if we turn over, if we start a new job, and that can be okay, if 2 or 3 years, you're with a new company. Yeah, I mean, that probably you learn new things, you're exposed to
Hmm.
new fresh ideas, and so on and so forth. But I think it's I think it's just so important to realize that we need to be responsible for our own kind of development,
Yeah.
and how important it is to be around people that that sort of resonate, because it's kind of like that old saying, you can tell a lot about somebody by their 3 or 4 or 5 closest friends. So who are your 3 or 4 or 5 closest friends at work, right?
Hmm.
And that's going to, it's like that in sports anywhere. If you're, it's there's no substitute for talent, but if you're hanging around people that really work hard, and that somehow you can sync up with, it's going to make you better. You're becoming, kind of the people that you're hanging around with. I
Hmm.
don't know. What do you think, Aaron? Is that making any
No,
sense
I
at all?
think you made several good points there, and it really started to make me think as well. Like, what is the difference there between that philosophy you're talking about, which is exactly what I feel like, if we're labeling things, that Gen Z and to an extent millennials feel like they're missing, which is the kind of support and mentorship that you're talking about. They like learning new things. They like
Yeah.
evolving, but I feel that there's evolved an undercurrent of cynicism within that age group, because they don't have any illusions that, for worse, I would say that they are very disposable, especially in these tech companies. They
Yeah.
they will just, like these mass layoffs we're having right now, like out of the blue, it's just like someone decided somewhere else that you're out. Like, even if you were 120% of quota, like it doesn't translate. It doesn't, your direct manager had no say in it. It came 3 levels above them from some place in a different state or a different country. And I wonder how many times you can get that gut punch without deciding, okay, I'm just out looking out for myself now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
That's
it's hard,
interesting.
especially with the lack of companies, the structure like you're talking, or you've
Yeah.
experienced, or that my parents maybe experienced, which was, you could work at one company, you could go to different roles and evolve yourself and become something, to your point, like
Yeah.
constantly evolving into new things, and not be put into one specific category, allowed to do that, allowed to have some failures and still recover from them, and have a pension. And that
Yeah.
just doesn't seem to exist anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know
Yeah.
really where I'm going with this. That's kind of a downer. But
What
um
one thing, there's a couple things that you're kind of sparking in me that I think are really, really interesting. One is, like, I was just talking recently to somebody who's kind of an old person like me about these labels, these categories that we put on people. I mean, in my lifetime, I think that's new. I mean,
yeah.
my friend was pointing that out to me, my friend is, I think almost 80, was pointing that out.
Uh-huh.
And I was going, wow, that's true. I mean, if you think about the different generations, or, we categorize people more today than I
Oh,
think
that's
ever in the
huh.
past. And when you just think about you and I, Aaron, and like what we started with, our experience together, I mean, we're we're in different generations, but there's so much relevance to being able to collaborate, to
Yeah.
interact,
Yeah.
and maybe we categorize, too much.
Mm.
And so the other thing that what you were sparking in me, which is really interesting listening to you, is I feel like, what I would encourage people to do, folks that are like you're describing, maybe are in those high tech firms. And I get it. I work for a large company. I know that, business can be business. It can be kind of cold, and they
Yeah.
can, cut positions, and all of a sudden you're at a job. My coaching or my input would be like, work on believing in believe in yourself,
Mm.
kind of like, if you work hard and you put your best into what you're doing, good things are going to happen. People are going to notice, just, that. And so, and that's not to say, because I've had setbacks in my life, where there's trauma, there's stress. It's like a real blow.
Yeah.
But, one of my favorite quotes, do you remember heavyweight fighter named Mike Tyson, right?
Oh, of course. He's
Yeah.
everywhere now. He has his own podcast now as
Oh, he
well,
does?
which is quite good.
Okay.
So you
Okay.
should check it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I could go off on another tangent, but with my favorite quote probably of all time is by Mike Tyson. He said, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth."
Oh, I love that one. I
Don't you
have
love
heard that. I
that
didn't
quote?
realize that was him. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. It's
great.
like, we're gonna get punched in the mouth. Then what? I mean, that's
Yeah.
the question. And so,
Yeah.
um, and he's had his life journey big time.
Mhm.
It's so wonderful to see, how he's kind of like it. I don't follow him super close. The tangent I was going to go on, but most people, and probably in your audience, don't remember the boxing promoter named Don King.
Oh, I definitely do. Like,
Do
he
you
was his
remember?
own personality. Like, he larger than life, like
Yeah, yeah.
crazy hair. I remember like spiky hair and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So I was a huge boxing fan growing up. My favorite fighter was Muhammad Ali,
Mhm.
and so I was very and so people would always connect Don King, my name, with the boxing
Oh
promoter,
yeah, that's
decades ago, when
yeah,
it was
totally.
like,
Yeah.
popular.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's like, I think that's where, you know, putting your all into it, good things are going to happen. Just having that, it's partly just belief and faith. And I think, it's something that we have to keep working at and working on, but believing in ourselves. And then like you alluded to, the importance of what really stuns me is when I hear somebody, maybe there's a training offered, or something, and they go, I already went through that training. It's like, well, I've got trainings I've gone through 5, 6, 7, 8 times, right? Yeah. And
That growth.
I always pick up some
Mm.
nugget. Don't have that attitude of like, been there, done that. It's like,
You know what? That's how I would
jump into it.
quantify what
Yeah,
I've seen from you. I think you just hit on something as well, is when we see someone else not just say, "Hey," as a leader, "Hey, if you really want to grow and develop, you have to have a growth mindset." And it's not always pleasant. Sometimes you get punched in the face because you're
yeah,
risking, you're pushing your
yeah,
boundaries, your edges. It can
yeah,
be risky, but that's where you find new skills and you evolve. And that is, I saw that manifest in you when we were at the gym a lot of times. You'd be like, man, I I'm not as good as I want to be at what was that thing called? Wall balls. And then you decided one time, like, hey, I'm gonna that 10,000 reps rule.
yeah,
Supposedly, if you do something 10,000 times, you master it.
yeah,
And I'll be damned if you didn't every single day, no matter how hard the workout was, you went over either before the after the workout, and you knocked out another 100 something. You did some number to get towards your 10,000
yeah,
until they were no longer a big deal for you. And to see someone do the growth mindset, like physically represented, as I'm saying, but also if they're in a leadership position and you're seeing them go to that same training, they didn't go once or twice. If it's offered and the company is going to, allow them to go again, you can pick up something new. Maybe you got good at two of the things they taught the first couple of times, but now you're going to work on something else. And it's a constant kind of refining of skill sets, looking for opportunities to do that. I think that's a great point.
yeah,
Yeah. Don't get
yeah,
don't get complacent.
yeah. And the other thing, I think because I listened to a couple of your podcasts, which were great, and there was one on, you were talking. There was more like, uh, wisdom, insights about. You were talking about how, as in heading up your company, you were talking about the how, and not,
Mm.
telling people how, but actually, creating those, influencing them with kind of where you want to go, and then tapping their genius, tapping
Let
their
them,
talent.
yeah, let
And
them
I
lead
thought
you.
that was, I thought
Yeah.
that was, I thought that was wonderful. And
Which was not easy for me to learn. As
right,
an A-type personality who likes controlling process, a lot of times I'd be like, "No, that's not the right way to do it because that's not the way I would have gone about it." And as a leader, I really had to learn, like, sometimes they need to go about it in a completely different way that in my brain doesn't seem like it's going to be nearly as effective, and we get a way better result. But unless
yeah,
I let them do it,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, you're fully present. That's what I got out of you. I was reading. Well, and before I say that point, I mean, what you were spurring in me was like, the other thing is, and I think I saw it as I was on your kind of accessing. I think you made a post or something out there, that these are my way of describing it, was just being able to find that breath of fresh air. Find, also, and where I would apply it too is like cross cultural. A breath of fresh air can be like, it can, you might think of, getting outdoors or going for a hike, or, doing something
Mm,
recreational, all good. But also, for me, I think it's important, as we talk about kind of growing ourselves, is to get outside of our bubble, kind of
mm.
like, and interact with people from different cultures, and really, kind of be well read, from a maybe from an experience point of view, and not literally well read. I mean, that's good too,
Well
but
experienced.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
yeah. You could
yeah.
say
It's
well
like,
traveled. You could say
yeah,
like a lot of different ways to say that. Yeah.
I remember I was, I won't give you the whole backstory, but I ended up in this small group breakout in this business kind of setting seminar. And as it happened, I was the only, uh, you know, white guy born in America. Everybody else,
Hmm.
nobody else in my group was born in America. Everybody was a different nationality. And I think I spent at least like an hour in this breakout or 45 minutes. And I've never forgotten that. That was so wonderful to hear, kind of their perspectives and and to just to be able to learn and kind of feel what it's like to also kind of be in the minority, right?
Yeah, I
And
know,
and
right?
so
We're a big
yeah,
Western country, and it
yeah,
can be so tempting to just stay inside because it's a big bubble. Stay
yeah,
inside this big North American bubble.
right,
Um,
right.
and especially in the context of what we're talking about, the way that we sell or the way that we tell stories to customers in the US or from a Western perspective. And we can learn so much from getting outside perspectives of how things are done elsewhere and applying them here as well. Um,
Totally. And I
Great
think that's
point.
important, whatever that looks like is to not, if we take an inventory of our lives and we realize that we're kind of in a bubble, it's like, got to break out of the bubble. And
Yeah.
so your points about the how and how, letting people, you know, enabling people. That's how I would summarize what your podcast was. It was right on top. I read a lot. A rabbi out of the UK named Jonathan Sachs, and I
Hmm.
love his essays. He wrote a book on leadership, and and so I happened to be reading one of his essays where he was distinguishing between power and influence. And when I heard your podcast, I thought, wow, that resonates because we think, even like when we're in leadership positions, we think, we're supposed to exercise this power. And part of what I could say that I got out of your podcast was, no, I want to exercise influence. And Sachs' point was like power is like a zero sum game. If you give it away, right, you've got less of
Oh
it.
yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
influence, he says we tend to think of those kind of as the same, but influence is different. If you the more influence you give away, the more it grows. And that's
Oh,
what
I
I got
love
out of
that. Don, that's a
your
fantastic
podcast is like,
perspective.
I said, Aaron is influencing people. He's not like he's engaged, right? I mean,
Well,
he's
I just
not
love
he's not
that.
like just get here. I'm going to give you some of my power. That's not what I heard from you. It was like
Mm.
you influence them in a way that to bring out the best in them, to let them do their own work and give them some freedom, but you were still like, engaged. And I don't know if I'm making sense with that, but
No,
that's what I got out of your podcast, which I thought was awesome.
I think it's, I mean, first of all, that's great. I think that you're giving me too much credit, but thank you. But
You see,
I
you
love hearing
embarrassed
it.
me up front, so I had to get you back. Right?
That's okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. I see what you did there.
Actually,
But I
I'm
love
kidding. I mean it totally as you did, but no, go
that.
ahead, please.
But I really like what you're saying there. Like, I think we get those tangled, power and influence.
Yeah.
And if you untether them, influence is so much more attractive when done correctly. Influence is probably has a lot to do with what I talked about at the beginning of the episode, which is watching you just do your thing influenced me to want to do my thing better. You know, watching your work ethic influenced me to like want to have a good work ethic. I think this is a great transition too. To let's talk a little bit about maybe what your philosophy is right now. That has kind of been the distillation of the different roles that you've had, the different leadership positions you've been in, the different teams that you've led. Um, right now that you're using as a consultant, because I was really curious to learn more about. I'm seeing the pickle juice philosophy. And I would like you to run us, and I think our listeners as well, through the pickle juice kind of like a framework
Okay.
that you have.
Yeah. So, kind of what I'm doing right now is, as a consultant, involves working with sellers, professional salespeople, sales leaders. both from a skill standpoint and also in like, you know, what, like if you look on Catalyst, where I'm out on LinkedIn, you'll see that my title now is customer development strategist. So that's an area that I really I love, and I've always loved that, is being able to work with sellers and sales leaders, but very much directly with sellers and ultimately into customers with like, you know, how should we approach this opportunity? How can we, you know, win a customer here? And what, you know, and so I have a methodology that is like pretty simple. It's well informed by two people named Robert Miller and Stephen Hyman. Years ago wrote a book called Strategic Selling, and they also
Oh,
wrote a lesson
yeah,
on book
famous
called
book.
Conceptual Selling. But it's informed by their thought process, which is kind of timeless because it's kind of grounded in psychology and and just good, very much integrity, honest approach to people. It's not, there's no manipulation at all.
Oh, good.
It's very sound
Yeah.
from that perspective. But so my method is just to help assess what is, you know, if I'm working with a professional salesperson, you know, I like to help them reduce the uncertainty. So you saw in my little outline there, if they're uncertain about the who or the how or the what, then I think I can help them, you know, sort through
Hmm.
those things. And another way of looking at it is, and this will resonate with you because you have like a performing arts background, right, Aaron? I think we're
Yes.
and
Yes. As my
so,
wife pointed out today, she was like, "You have several expensive degrees in pretending."
but
She
you
was
know
telling
what?
me I was talking about a sales call I had to do next week, and she was like, and I was like, "Oh, I just don't know if like how I should approach this and blah blah blah." And she said, "You're going to be fine. You have several expensive degrees in pretending," which I just thought
But you
was
know
interesting.
that's it's wonderful. It's who you are. I mean, it's your makeup, and I can see that background in you. But anyway, I think it was T.S. Eliot who said that you know, between the what do you say? Between the imagination and the act falls the shadow.
Mm,
So, you know, you can
imagination.
imagine. So, if you're
Yeah.
a salesperson and you can imagine this new customer, or you can imagine, you know, winning this opportunity or winning this job, but between that imagining it and the act falls the shadow. And it's in that shadow that I like to do my work. And I help
Oh, I love
people
that.
sort of like, you know, let's assess what our current position is related to where we're trying to get to. Let's imagine, let's imagine a better position, and let's make a game plan for how to get there. It's a really simple, you know, way of looking at it. But it has discipline. It has like the 10,000 wall balls was grueling, you know, and so and my process isn't grueling, but it's like it takes it can you can come out of my, you know, an hour with me with a little bit of like, wow, okay, it's, I mean, we have to get a little bit, we have to roll up our sleeves because
Yeah.
these things
It,
are
yeah.
not easy, you know, to
Yeah.
accomplish. But so I was kind of going, well, how can I kind of depict this, you know, in my consulting? And for some reason I remembered my favorite Uncle Sandy. And my Uncle Sandy was this Boeing engineer that actually, I did some selling of airplanes, I think, you know, back in his day. But he was just, I just loved my Uncle Sandy. And we'd go over a lot for Thanksgiving dinner. But he had some strange habits. And one of them, he would drink the pickle juice. And so, you know, it's like, and as a kid, you know, watching him drink that pickle juice, you go, you know, you're just amazed by, you know, him eating the pickle juice or drinking
Uh-huh.
the pickle juice. But so he had this, we had this, I don't know if it's probably all myth, but he could eat a lot of dessert and he could, you know, he was just this healthy, big, healthy guy. And we would always say it was the pickle juice. That's why he was
Oh,
so
okay.
healthy and he
That's what
could
made him
so,
so robust and
yeah.
like full
And
of energy.
so,
It was the pickle
so
juice.
that's where I got my, you know, theme. It's like, and as a salesperson or a seller, or if you're in, you know, going about your career, it's like, you got to be willing to sometimes do things that the average person won't do, right?
Mm.
That's part of it. And so, you know, it's like you got to drink the pickle juice. And so that's my theme. So I title it the rhythm and rhyme, pickled in reason. That's my consulting, of sales
Nice.
strategy and that approach. So,
Yeah, I love it. I wonder if that's similar as well to, I don't know if you've ever heard um, I think I used this even with my son when we were talking about strategies for getting his homework done, was eat the frog first.
oh, perfect.
Yeah, it's just like
Yeah,
do the thing that you're dreading the most, just like get
yeah,
it done.
yeah,
And then you have some momentum there and then you can keep going. And I've
yeah,
heard the exact opposite, to be honest. I've heard like do a small thing that'll start momentum and then you can get
yeah,
to the frog.
yeah.
But I kind of like yours better because it's more like, no, the pickle juice is good for you, but
Yes.
you might not think it's going to be at first, and you might like make a face. But this, like
Yeah,
getting into, to your point as well, bringing it back to that T.S. Eliot quote, is
yeah,
like if you can imagine it, and there's the execution, there's the actual thing at the end of it, but almost you're bringing that deal or the possibility of it being successful into life and staying out of fear and scarcity by casting a shadow of possibility, by saying we want this to happen. This is how these are the things that we can control. These are the things that we can't. The customer ultimately makes the decision,
yeah,
but we can look at their business and what they're trying to do and why they're talking to us in the first place, and honestly explore those areas with our discovery of where in the business do we think our solution will really help them to be able to get those results
yeah.
from a place of truth, not from a place of a manipulation, to your point,
No,
from a place of
no.
truth.
Hmm. Absolutely.
I
I
like that
think that's
approach.
so important because that's goodness, That's believing that you can actually help a customer, right?
Yeah.
Is to get that foundation. That's good. That's goodness. And so it's not manipulative at all. But the other thing that comes from Miller Hyman that I've always loved is the question is like when you think about that customer opportunity, like you just described, Aaron, it's like a key question is what it what change can we create? So if you think about they've
Mm.
got this process of going through a decision, to hire us or to hire somebody else, right? And they've got certain decision makers. And it's kind of like you imagine it like a train going down the track. But what change can we create? Maybe we can, create a change in how that track unfolds. It's like we
Mm.
have and you kind of alluded to it, and what you described is if we're careful and we really analyze and think about this, and we might be able to make some change and come out to a different future than where
Yeah.
that train is going if it just keeps heading down the track. So sometimes
Yeah.
I talk to sales leaders or professional salespeople is like, you know, the strategy process, it's all about taking action. So there has to be follow through. So I usually meet, there's a rhythm to get to the end of like, okay, here's a success. We have an objective that we're getting to, but it's like what we need to be thinking about is actions that would not otherwise happen, because we really thought it through. We're going to do things more deliberate, and we're going to do certain things that we probably wouldn't have done had we not sat down and really planned this, thought this through. And then we just take successive bites to like, it's the same process over. We assess our current position again, and then what would be a better position and what can we do to get there. And so, we're just almost like climbing a ladder to get to the point where the customer says, yeah, we absolutely want to partner with you.
Yeah, like putting each rung of the ladder just makes
Hmm.
sense that you would
Yeah.
take the next step until they're
Yeah.
at it just makes sense that they're going to get their result because of all of those rungs in the ladder that you put in,
Yeah.
and that it makes
Yeah.
sense and it ties back to your solution. What something that I would love for you to give our audience would be, and I'm seeing a lot of this right now. Like they might be feeling a bit of anxiety about maybe the role they're currently in with big bad wolf of if you're calling it a recession or a downturn or whatever you are, the role they're in currently, they might be feeling some ways about it, or they might have recently been out of work and now they're looking at getting another gig. And you've talked about kind of working on yourself, controlling the things, as I often say, that you can control, and helping yourself evolve. But when you are, for instance, in your consulting capacity now, if you were to be brought in and you've got your pickle juice approach and you're coming in and you are going to start working with maybe a sales rep, maybe, towards the middle of their, they have some experience, but they're in a slump. They're feeling a bit stuck, maybe just not that inspired. Do you have some go-to tools, recommendations, tactics that you like to use or help them with in order to help them maybe climb out of that pit and start getting kind of motivated and active again?
Yeah. You know what? The first thing that my first reaction to what you just described, which is really important, that people are, having those sort of feelings that there can be anxiety about it, and is like I can get philosophical about it at the same
Oh, please
before I go
do.
there. My first reaction is, look for a mentor.
Mm,
Who in your life, even if you have to look them up. I've had those happen in my life where I was in some anxious, like, wow, what should I do? And I would look up people. There's a couple of people that I used to report to. It's like I'd call them on the phone. I hadn't talked to them for 3 years. And
okay.
say,
Yeah.
hey, do you mind? I'm kind of like going through a real decision. I'm having tough. Would you spend some time with me? And that was golden to me. Those people spent a lot of, in some cases, a lot of, just time, whether it's on the phone
Hmm.
or, or just, somebody that you can like, that you trust, and that has some wisdom, and just go and ask for some help, ask for some guidance, tap that,
Ask for some help. Yeah.
because, I know, and here I am in the consulting business and stuff like that, but people call me for like that. I want to help. It's like, I don't want to
And
charge them
that's,
a
I
bunch of
think
money,
that's such a good point, Don. Like,
Yeah.
I think in our brains sometimes we can think, I don't want to bother them.
Yeah.
We kind of have them on a pedestal anyway.
Yeah.
That was that boss I really liked 3 years ago or two
Yeah.
roles ago or whatever it is. They're probably busy. And so we kind of like negate reaching out. We don't want to
Yeah.
bother people or, from a stupid masculine point of view, look weak.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's to your point though, like I love it when people reach out to me.
Yeah.
I want to help. Your mentors want to help you, and you know
Yes.
who those people are.
Yes. And I think
Reach
you just
out.
hit on a key point, is that, great candidates are previous bosses who you respect.
Mhm.
It is such a compliment when I've gotten calls from people who are no longer, working, with me, for me, whatever, however you want, but they call, hey, could I run this? Bring it. Let's go.
Yeah,
I want to help you.
yeah.
Absolutely. And so, but the other key part of that is that a prior boss knows you really well. That's the other key.
Mhm.
It's like,
And they can
that's
call
not.
you on your
Yeah, yeah. They can, like, well, they
your
know
mental
your
fallacies.
strengths and weaknesses in a
Yeah.
professional environment. That's not to discount the importance of maybe an aunt or an uncle, or whatever, whoever else you might have, or a parent you have in your life. That's not, or a grandparent. It's like,
Mhm.
those are good candidates too. The nice thing about somebody who you reported to, who you, if, as long as you really respect them, and they had a good influence on you in your life, is they know your strengths and weaknesses. They know
Yeah.
things about you, that when you lay out your anxiety and stuff, they're going to be able to, you know dialogue
Yeah.
with you in some really specific and meaningful ways. I think maybe challenge you. So that's the first thing that came to mind,
No, I think
for
that's
me,
brilliant
Aaron.
advice
Yeah. I
because it doesn't
mean,
have to be any harder than that, does it?
yeah, yeah.
Like if
Think
you're
think
feeling
about think
stuck,
about who you could, tap.
who
Yeah,
helped you feel unstuck in the past, even if you're not working with them now?
absolutely.
Chances are they want to hear from you. They
Yeah,
want to help.
yeah,
It's flattering to have somebody come and
totally,
seek out your expertise when you don't even work for them anymore. I
totally.
think 9 times out of 10, that's gonna be a positive response. I'm
Oh, I
making up
think so.
figures now, but
It's never, for me in my life, it's never been anything but a positive response. And sometimes I
yeah.
feel guilty because I think about those people now, to where I go, I wonder if I did enough to thank them. I wonder, because, like, it's like they, you know again, it's like who you hang around with, those people are so important, and so, if you haven't talked, if somebody hasn't spoken to that kind of a person in 3 or 5 years, so what? Call them up. I guarantee you that, it'll be, I can't guarantee, but I would say it'll absolutely be a
I put
positive.
money on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Don, I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
You know what? I think that's a fantastic note for us to wrap up
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
as well is um, for this kind of thing. If people are looking for mentorship, let's say in a consulting capacity from you, what is the best way for people to get in contact with you or to learn more about you and what you do and kind of along those avenues?
Well, I'm out on LinkedIn, so you could find me on LinkedIn. I still am identified as a consultant for Catalyst Workplace Activation. I also have an email address of Donald at uh, dkpicklejuice.com. Donald at dkpicklejuice.com. So
We'll make sure that we
anyway,
put that in
yeah.
the show notes, everybody. I love that. I love that you just brought it full circle with the pickle juice. That was well played. Well played. Slow clap. Slow clap.
Hey, Aaron, you are awesome. I think you are just fantastic. It's so fun I'm so honored to be on your podcast, and I just love everything about Storied coaching, and I just think that you are terrific. So thank you.
Thank you so much for being a guest today, Don. And yeah, anyone, if you love what you heard here, and seriously, just even that one point of if you're feeling really stuck, man, reach out for a conversation with a past mentor. They want to hear from you, especially right now. And if you want to learn more information about Don, like really reach out. I'll put it in the show notes again, but Donald at dkpicklejuice.com, which is just fun to say. Well, Don, thank you so much for being here and have a fantastic day.
You too, Aaron. Pleasure.